Recording live in the Hickory Hut studio, this is The Session with Ryan and Jess. Jess, thanks for coming back for round 2.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun being here.
It is fun being here. I appreciate the fact that you're having a good time. So, as you know, the election has not yet been decided, at least as of Wednesday morning when we are recording this. So what we are going to do is we are going to break down the election state by state, county by county, to give you all the top news and information. No, we're not going to do that. You have plenty of outlets to get all that information from. But what we are going to do, we have a special guest today, is a first-time voter, and her name is Jess Lind.
Yep, this is the first presidential election, the first election in general that I have been able to vote in.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So you are from Wisconsin.
I am.
And you voted from Ohio.
I did, yep.
So explain how that went.
So Wisconsin at least has a website that I could go and request an absentee ballot because I'm here in Ohio for college and I wouldn't have been back in Wisconsin for election day. So I filled out a form. I had to submit verification of my identity, just had to take a picture of my driver's license, enter in my social security number, all of that.
Did you feel safe doing that?
I did because it was a government website that I went to.
Okay.
And
how could you verify that it was a government website? To go off our last episode.
Well, it said .gov. It was the first thing that came up on Google when I looked at it.
Okay.
And it looked like a truly legitimate source. It didn't look biased anyway. It didn't look like someone was just going to take my information.
Okay. Anyway, so you went to their website.
Yep, I filled out all the information there. They said it'll probably take upwards 4 weeks or so to process just because you're out of state, obviously, and with everything going on with the pandemic, we're in the middle of it. It'll take a little longer. And it did. It took about a month for my ballot to come in the mail here.
Okay.
I was able to track the progress of it online, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I got that. I had all the instructions on the ballot that I needed to do, how I could fill it out, and then I mailed it back.
So, as a first-time voter, was there anything in there that you were like, boy, I'm really nervous about doing any of these steps? Or, I mean, was it all pretty well written out for you?
It was pretty well described. It gave examples on what to do and how not to fill it out. So I think it was pretty straightforward.
So did you, because I have no idea, did you fill it out with like pen or did you have to go online and do it? Or
I filled it out with a pen.
Okay.
Just so pencil marks wouldn't get smudged or erased over time.
So it was pen and paper and then you send it back and I'm assuming from there it gets processed.
Yep.
Interesting. So as a first-time voter, how did you decide on who you were going to vote for? I mean, where are your political values? Without describing to us whether you are Republican or Democrat, but where did your background for your political views come from?
My political views, the background for them, I know I wasn't necessarily raised a certain way. Both the parties of my parents are obviously of a certain political party, but they had an open mind, like, hey, feel free to decide whatever you want to decide. If you feel like these views align with you more, then this would probably be the party that you would more align with and more would vote for. And just kind of experiences throughout my little 2 years in adult life so far is how I've wanted to decide how I did vote for in the election.
So do you think your views line up with your parents or are they different?
When I first started getting into, I guess, politics, so to speak, my views didn't as much align with my mom, but aligned with my dad.
Okay.
And I think my mom's views have shifted a little bit, so I aligned with both my parents' views. Now, my brother, who's also an adult, he's not really into politics as much, so I haven't talked about that with him at all, but so I don't know if those would align with him either.
So let me ask you this. Going off our last show, which if you didn't listen to our last show, you probably should.
It's pretty fantastic.
It was super fantastic, and it was about misinformation. So let me ask you, since you've been a college student out on your own, away from home, did you find your political values tested in some way?
When I was presented with different information multiple times on a certain topic, I was like, oh, well, maybe I could learn to think about it from this point of view, or maybe I should start thinking about it from this point of view. Certain viewpoints, I'm leaning certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
it's all really, like, at the end of the day, like, if I'm presented with new information and I feel like in my morals and my ethics that I should make a change on how I personally view that, I will. I'm not going to stick one way just to stick one way.
That's because you're still young. When you get to be a certain age, you're like, no, that's my view. I'm not changing ever. And then the hardest thing to do is change, once you've been around a while. But it is enlightening if you allow yourself the opportunity to hear a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Is there anything else we should talk about as your first time voting experience?
Well, all I have to say is that I tried to keep an open mind throughout the process. By any means, the party that I am registered to, if there were views from certain candidates or certain people in my election that I didn't align with, I wouldn't have voted that party. Like, I think it's important for me, at least, that I keep an open mind, because I don't want to grow up to be a stubborn, middle-aged woman that...
Wait, what? Oh, woman. Okay, you were staring right at me, and I was beginning to wonder.
No.
So one thing that came up off the air when I was talking to Jess about this topic was, I thought this was fascinating. I didn't really get into it with her at the time, but your friend actually worked the polls all day yesterday, all day on Tuesday.
She did.
What did she have to say about that? Anything?
Well, she was very exhausted at the end of the day. She went in like 5:30, got back at about 10 p.m.
Oh, my.
So she was there for a good 15, 16 hours.
Wow.
And she described a lot of stories to me about people acting like goofballs and and not following the rules. And, of course, she got angry phone calls from people like, oh, why isn't this counted? Oh, why is it this way? And she had to explain, like, oh, these are the rules. If you want your vote counted properly, you've got to follow such and such steps. But other than that, she said it was a smooth process, other than being totally exhausted.
Well, absolutely. Now, I'm going to ask you a question you may not know the answer to. Was she the youngest volunteer there?
I don't know. I know she's one of the youngest that works there.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on the younger side.
I just, because when I went to vote, I mean, it was all older folks who were doing it, and thank you to them for filling the polls and helping us vote. I am one of those people who needed much help as I worked the machine, but anyway. So just real quick, one more last question about her being a poll worker.
Mm-hmm.
How did that ever come to be?
In one of my classes I shared with her last year, Professor Sonnergaard asked the class if anyone was interested in Board of Elections job. And she didn't necessarily like her job at the time, so she's like, yeah, I'd like to apply to this. And because Professor Sonnergaard was able to tell her about it, give her an application for it, she filled one out and she was hired.
Very cool. Defiance College, politically active.
Yay.
Since 1850. So interesting about being a first-time voter, and especially a out-of-state first-time voter.
I know.
So there you go. First-time voter Jess Lint talks about her time, voting. So obviously, as of this recording, we are still waiting to see who the president is, and I hope you voted on Tuesday because it's very important. If you did not, I don't want to hear you complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, thank you for joining in, and this has been the session with Ryan, and this has been the session with Jess.
Thank you, Ryan.
You bet. See ya.
Bye.